Namaste students. So today we will deal with a chapter that is S block elements. Okay. So as you all know that we have already learned some of the basics of this particular chapter in the classification of elements, like how the periodic table is being classified into different blocks and the four different blocks, that is S, P, D, F, how the electrons are arranged in particular orbitals as well as shells, and which are the elements present in different blocks. All these we have almost got an idea in the classification chapter. But in today's chapter, that is the S block elements, we will actually learn how these elements are brought into S block, okay, their properties, okay, each and element, how do they behave with different categories, okay, all these we will be studying in this particular chapter. So starting with S block elements, now what do you mean by S block elements? S block, that is the S orbital. How many electrons can it accommodate? It can accommodate 2 electrons, right? So S, if you consider it as an orbital, it can accommodate how many electrons? 2 electrons. So if the electrons present in the outermost shell, okay, can occupy the S orbital, if the electrons present in the outermost shell can occupy, or which are going to that outermost shell, which will be that shell, that is S shell, if it is occupying that particular S orbital, then we call it as S block elements. Electrons occupying the S orbital are called the S block elements. If their outermost electrons are occupying the S orbital, then we call them as S block elements, right? So as you all know, as I said, that it can occupy or it can accommodate only 2 electrons, which means how many groups could be formed? Obviously, if one electron is occupying a particular valence orbital of S, okay, S shell, then obviously there is group 1, and if the second electron is occupying, then there is group 2. So totally, as you all know, in the periodic table, if you see, there are only 2 S block elements, that is group 1 as well as group 2, right? So if you see, if you imagine a periodic table is something like this, then to the left 2 groups you have S block, to the right side you have P block, between you have D and then F, right? So as you can see that there are only 2 groups which are formed based on S orbitals. So you have basically group 1, right, and you have group 2 elements, correct? So you will see one particular group wherein last 1 electron occupies the S orbital, and in group 2 what happens? 2 electrons will occupy the S orbital. So I can designate it something like this. So 1 electron is occupying the S orbital. Here group 2, in the sense there are 2 electrons which are occupying the S orbital. So this is what you get, a basic idea about the S block elements, right? So for example, if you take the example of group 1, which are the elements found in group 1. So starting from lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium and francium. So these are the elements which are present in group 1, and group 2 you have beryllium, magnesium, calcium, strontium, barium and radium. So these are the elements present in group 2. Now let's come back to group 1 elements. Now we will study what are these elements, how are they found in nature, how would they react with other substances. All these will be studying one by one, and also their properties. So that's basically what we are going to study. Their compounds, how do they form different compounds and how do they behave, for what are they used, okay, in our daily life. All these will be studied. So talking about the group 1 elements first, that is lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium, francium. Let's talk about these elements. Now as I said, group 1 elements will have how many electrons in the outermost orbital? They have only 1 electron in the outermost orbital. Now these elements, okay, have a particular name, and these are designated as alkali metals. Alkali metals, right? So why are these designated as as alkali metals. Why are these called or categorized as alkali metals? Because these elements, okay, if you try making them react with water, or if you try putting them into water or try dissolving it, they are easily soluble and they form hydroxides. So hydroxides, as you all know, the water soluble bases are called alkalis, right? So what do they form? When they are water soluble, they form hydroxides. That is what it means. So these form hydroxides when they react with water, and these hydroxides are alkaline in nature, which is basic, which is soluble in water, and that's why they are called alkali metals. Got it? So these easily form hydroxides when treated with water, and that's why they are called alkali metals. In the same way, group 2 has a particular name, and that is alkaline earth metals. Alkaline earth metals. So these are found in nature. These metals are found in nature very easily. Okay. So these elements, what happens is that, why are these said to be alkaline here? Because these oxides, suppose I take magnesium, if it forms its oxide, that is magnesium oxide, that oxide when it is treated with water, they form hydroxides, which means that oxide will be easily soluble in water and they will be alkaline in nature, or they form hydroxides. Okay, so that is why they are alkaline in nature, and that's why we call them as alkaline earth metals. What is this soluble in water? Their oxides are soluble in water, but in the case of alkali metals, they are directly soluble in water. That's why they are called alkaline metals, and here it is alkaline earth metals, because their oxides are soluble in water. So this is how these metals are, or how these elements are categorized into. So group 1 elements are called alkali metals, and group 2 elements are called alkaline earth metals, right? So here, as you can see, these elements, that is talking about alkali metals, here sodium and potassium are really abundant in nature. They are found to be highest abundant in the nature. That means they are easily available. They are in more quantity. But if you check these elements like lithium, rubidium, cesium, all these are found to be in lower abundance. Okay, how much ever is present in nature, the quantity is said to be low when compared to sodium and potassium. This is much abundant, and these three, that is lithium, rubidium, cesium, are said to be lower abundant. And francium is a radioactive element. Okay, and its longest lived isotope is francium-223, okay, which has a half-life for about 22 minutes only. So it is a very highly unstable radioactive element, okay, which has a half-life of 22 minutes. So this is also said to be a rarest isotope. So mainly you have sodium and potassium, which is easily available in nature, or which is in much abundant in nature. Coming to alkaline earth metals, here beryllium, okay, and radium. These are said to be the rarest of them. Beryllium is first of all rare, but compared to radium, it is very rare in nature. It is found in igneous rocks. The radium element is found in igneous rocks for about 10 to the power minus 10, so much quantity. Okay, so that is one thing to be remembered. And here magnesium and calcium are much in abundance. They stand in 6th rank. Okay, so they stand in 6th position in abundance in the Earth's crust. So they are highly abundant. And strontium and barium are much into lower abundance. Okay, so this is just giving you an idea how these elements are present, and also what's the abundance present in nature. Talking about their abundance. Okay, so this is about the basic idea of these elements and how they are found in the nature. Now talking about the electronic configuration of alkali metals. Now if you take the example of sodium you write it as the noble gas force. Suppose, okay, first let me split it up in one. So you write it as 1s2, 2s2, 2p6 and then 3s1. Now if you have to simplify and write this for your simplified way, what do? You write it as the noble gas code. So the noble gas is neon, and you write it as 3s1. Right? So 3s1, because one electron is entering the valence s orbital, you call them as alkali metals, that is s block. So here, if you have to write the general electronic configuration for all of these first group elements, how do you write it? You write it as noble gas, right? So first you have a noble gas core, and then you write it as NS1, where N represents what? It is the principal quantum number for a particular period. So this comes in third period, that is what it represents. So principal quantum number is N, and S is your orbital and one electron. So this is the noble gas. Instead of neon, orbital noble gas. So this is a general electronic configuration for all of these alkali metals. In the same way, if you have to write it for alkaline orbitals, so you write it as noble gas with NS2. Correct? So this would be, how is it written? Because two electrons are occupying the valence s orbital, that's why we write it as NS2. That's why they are categorized as group 2 elements. Okay? So here one electron is occupying the valence orbital, and here two electrons are occupying the valence s orbital. So this is the general electronic configuration for alkali metals and alkaline earth metals. We also find some of the anomalous properties when you compare different elements. Now as I said, the group 1 elements like lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium, francium, if you see this, if you just see this group, the lithium element, okay, will behave or will have some other properties which is not similar to its own group. Okay, so it will have a different kind of property. It won't be matching the same group. And even if you see beryllium, this also exhibits that property. That is anomalous behavior in their properties. They won't be similar to that particular group. Okay, so this relation, okay, wherein they do not exhibit the property of its own group, but instead they will behave in such a way that they exhibit similarity in properties to the second element of the next group. I've already told this. That means this lithium would be behaving like magnesium, okay, or its properties will be similar to that of magnesium, which means their properties are similar to the second element present in the next group. So second element which is present in the next group. In the same way, beryllium would be having properties which is similar to aluminium instead of its own group. That means second element present in the next group. Okay, so this particular behavior, exceptional behavior or anomalous behavior of these two elements, that is lithium and beryllium, and this relation, okay, what they exhibit or the similarity in properties based on the second element of the next group is called the diagonal relationship. So they are diagonally related over here, or their properties are similar to the element which is diagonally related to it. This relationship is called the diagonal relationship. Okay. So whenever you study compounds which is related to beryllium or lithium, okay, they will have certain different properties when you compare it to all the other elements present in their own group. So always when you study the alkali metals, okay, the behavior of alkali metals with different substances, lithium or beryllium would show some other property, okay, which is different from them. And this relation is called diagonal relationship. Now why is this diagonal relationship exhibited? Because there may be similarities in their, ionic sizes, or you have this radius ratios when you compare it to their size of the radius, okay, the ionic radius or the atomic radius, when you compare it to them, okay, they would have similar values, okay. So that's why this diagonal relationship is observed in such elements like lithium and beryllium. For the first group elements, that is alkali metals, let us see how their different properties vary according to the electronic configuration, the atomic and ionic radii, the ionization enthalpy, as well as the hydration enthalpy. Now this term, that is hydration enthalpy, must be a new one to you, but let me explain what it is. So starting with the electronic configuration of alkali metals, as I said, there is a noble gas core in between and you have the valence s orbital wherein the electrons are filled. So how many electrons are filled for alkali metals? There is one electron filling taking place. For example, if I take sodium, so you write it as neon and then 3s1. Right? So you have one electron which is present in the outermost s orbital, which means that this one electron can be easily lost, right? Or it can be easily removed, right? So these particular elements, that is group 1 elements starting from lithium to the francium, all these are said to be the electropositive elements. Why electropositive? Because they easily tend to lose one electron. So what happens is that if you have an electron in the outermost shell, one electron, and there is nucleus. Okay, so as it has one electron in the outermost shell, it is very easy to lose one, right? Because there is less force of attraction when you compare it with nucleus as well as the outermost shell. So as the attraction is said to be less, it is easy to lose an electron. So if there are two electrons present or if there are more number of electrons present, you require more energy in order to remove them from the outermost shell. But instead, if you have one single electron in the outermost shell, it is simultaneously very easy for us to remove an electron. So that is what it says, and because of this removal of one electron, they usually form the monopositive ions. That means they have Na plus, which means there is only one electron which is lost, and that's why we say monopositive ions. In the same way, you have lithium, Li plus, right? So in this way, potassium, K plus. So in this way, they form monopositive ions which are electropositive in nature, and these alkali group, that is group 1 elements, are nothing but metals. Electropositive, that means they are metals wherein they try to lose electrons. That is what the electronic configuration gives us an idea about the alkali metals. The second one, that is atomic and ionic radii. Now as I said, atomic radii, it is the distance from the nucleus to the outermost shell, right? So radii, in the sense, it is divided by 2 because it is the distance between half of the distance, right? Half of the distance between the two atoms. So that is how we calculate two atoms. So atomic and ionic radii, if you are talking about, first of all, atomic radii. As you all know, if the size keep on increasing, right, what happens to the attraction between the nucleus as well as outermost shell? It obviously decreases if the size increases, which means that out of the whole periodic table, these first group elements, that is alkali metals, will be having larger size when compared to all of the elements in the periodic table. So the first group elements, okay, which are present, now suppose this is the periodic table, the first group elements, that is alkali metals, will have larger sizes when compared to all the other elements. Because the one electron which falls into the valence s orbital, okay, occupies a different shell itself, like 3s, 4s, 5s and so on. So what happens, the size also keep on increasing. But how would be the variation of the size? The size will keep on increasing as we move down the group. So the atomic size increases when you move down the group. That's one thing to be remembered. That is from lithium to cesium. As francium is radioactive, we do not consider it. So instead from lithium to cesium, so cesium is said to be having the largest size when you compare it to the whole periodic table. Okay, so this is how the size increases down the group. In the same way, ionic radii. Now if you compare lithium metal with the lithium ion, here ion in the sense there is losing of one electron. One electron is being lost. That means that shell is being removed. The new shell is removed. So how about the size if you compare, that is ionic radii? It will have always, the ionic radii will be less. That is cationic radius will be less when you compare it to the parent atom. So lithium ion, that is cation, will have a lesser size or smaller size when you compare it to the parent atom. That one thing to be remembered. Okay. So usually the ions, the cations will have smaller sizes when you compare it to its own parent atom. But usually the atomic size keep on increasing as you go down the group. Very simple to understand. And then you have ionization enthalpy. Now what do you mean by ionization energy? It is the energy required to remove an electron from the outermost shell of an atom. So do you have to supply more energy in terms of alkali metals where only one electron is present in the outermost shell? So do you have to supply more energy to remove an electron? Not required, right? So here easily you can remove the electron. Why are they said to be highly reactive here? Alkali metals are highly reactive. Why? Because they easily tend to lose an electron. There is only one electron. So do you require much of energy in order to remove them? No. So ionization energy keeps on decreasing as you move down the group. It's the opposite of atomic radius. So whatever energy you require in order to remove an electron, it decreases down the group. Decreases down the group. Okay, so what happens here? As the shells keep on increasing, the electron which is present over here can be easily removed. You need not supply much energy in order to remove them. That's what it says. So ionization enthalpy decreases down the group as you go on. Then the last one you have hydration enthalpy. Now what is hydration? Hydration is nothing but you're dissolving something with water. Hydration enthalpy is nothing but energy when you are adding these particular elements to water. Energy which is released. Now hydration enthalpy is nothing but the energy which is released when 1 mole of ions is dissolved in water or it is hydrated. You consider it as 1 mole. Okay, a standard value. Now hydration enthalpy, it is said to be very high for the lithium ions. Okay, so lithium ion will have high hydration enthalpy when you compare it to other elements like sodium, then you have potassium, then rubidium, cesium and so on. Okay, so here higher hydration enthalpy is released for lithium ion. Now what is the reason for this? As you all know, lithium is said to be having smaller size, right? So what happens? The water molecules keep on hydrating them. That means they form first layer, then they form second layer. So lithium will be in the center. You are hydrating them. You are making it dissolve in water, right? So whatever, because of this very less size, okay, they have more attraction towards the nucleus. Right. So attraction is said to be more when compared to all of these elements with the nucleus. Lithium will have more attraction. Now what happens to, in order to release this or remove this attraction, what you have to do? You have to make it hydrated. So what happens? This attraction is being reduced, so equal amount of energy is released. So lithium, as it is having a smaller size, it is said to be releasing more of energy, and that's why lithium ion is said to be having more hydration enthalpy. So the values whatever you get will be more for lithium ion when you compare it to all the other ions present in the first group. Okay, so this is one thing to be remembered. What is hydration enthalpy? Energy released when 1 mole of ions get hydrated or undergo hydration. Anyway, hydration is nothing but you are making it dissolving water. Okay, so these are the 4 basic properties which is to be understood for alkali metals.